Hello everyone, I hope you're all well. I'm Karen Doyle, Operations Director of CTAM Europe, and I'm here to welcome you all today and thank you for joining us. It's great to see, or you will very shortly see, the fantastic four on our screens today. I'm going to introduce you to Kasia Jablonska, one of CTAM Europe's board members, and then she'll in turn welcome the panel and they'll quickly introduce themselves. The session is due to last around 30 minutes and we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end, so please do get involved and ask via the Q&A button. Members of CTAM Europe can watch the recording of this and our archive of webinars and podcasts on the members only section of ctameurope.com, and I'll follow up by email with information on our executive management programme INSEAD, and the panellists may also email you directly. But as time is short, I'll take myself off screen now and leave you with our esteemed foursome. Enjoy.
So, hello and welcome. I'm Kasia Jablonska, a CTAM board member. I'm here today with three of the industry leading analysts and thought leaders discussing what our industry is going to look like in this post-COVID-19 world. Before we start, a bit of housekeeping, repeating what Karen had already said. If you have any questions, please submit them on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. If we don't have time, we will respond directly afterwards. You can also email us at info@ctameurope.com, info@ctameurope.com. Now, I'm sure you all are familiar with my guests, but I'll let them introduce themselves.
Shall I go first? Okay, hello everyone. My name is Nathalie Lethbridge. I have an advisory company called Atonik Digital, specialized in strategic advisory on commercial and content distribution and growth strategy, focused specifically on streaming. Maria?
Thank you, Nathalie. So let me go next. Maria Aguete. I am Senior Research Director at Omdia. Omdia is the research company result of the merger between IHS Market Technology and Obum, and I'm leading the media and entertainment research at Omdia. So hello, everyone. Guy?
We got a...
Okay, looks like we might have lost Guy, but I am sure, there we go.
Have you got me?
Yeah.
Analysis, London-based analyst specialised in the media and the content.
Okay, looks like we have a bit of technical trouble. Okay, so hopefully Guy will be able to sort it out quickly. In the meantime, let's start moving to the question. So once more, thank you for being here. And if we can start with Maria, 2020 was a boom year for streaming video services. What do you and Omdia think predicts for the next 5 years?
Correct. 1 second. Let me share my screen. So let me show you what is happening in 2020 and what we are expecting to happen in the next 5 years. So 2020 was a phenomenal year for streaming video. People were locked at home. They were consuming more TV than ever. And as a result, the subscriptions also recorded a massive hit, biggest growth ever in the history of streaming video. More than 200 million additions to online streaming. In 2020, we closed the year with 1.1 billion subscriptions to streaming video. We are expecting in 2025 to reach 1.6. This means 500 million new additions in the next 5 years. But what will happen this year? A slow growth, half what we got last year. When I presented these results, people were a bit not very sure about it, but the more and more companies are publishing results, Netflix, Disney, we realize that the growth is now slow. like companies cannot manage to get the number of subscribers they did last year for obvious reasons. Now there are other forms of entertainment, so they are spending their money other places. Also, all the pot of subscribers interested in online subscription, they already subscribed last year. Also very interesting, Cassian, to realize the importance of AVOD. If we look here at, for example, the US, AVOD is winning more interest, more revenues than SVOD. Also, although we keep talking about growth in online streaming, what happened with pay TV is still strong. Cord cutting is happening in some countries, but not in the whole world. So cord cutting is not a global phenomenon. Some countries, yes, are losing pay TV, but other countries are still winning. And as a result, pay TV revenues in countries like the US are still more than putting together all SVOD and AVOD platforms. We will speak a lot about this during the presentation. I'm very curious to know about my panelists' opinions, but there are too many D2C services. This is in the US, some of the top ones. If we add some of these services, we're already close to that ARPU that cable used to have, $100 a month. If we add Disney, Apple Plus, and all these new services together with the top 3 that everyone has, Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Disney. So something needs to happen, aggregation, consolidation. So we saw yesterday the news, HBO Max and Discovery, maybe Amazon and MDM. There will be lots of consolidation, aggregation, bundling. We will discuss all this later today. And of course, we need to discuss a lot about the emergence of AVOD, why all these big companies, they realize they have to invest not only in SVOD, also in AVOD, and sometimes in hybrid models. So companies like Viacom, CBS, Disney, Google, Amazon, Sony, Comcast, we can see how they are all focusing on different business models. Depending on the country, depending on the consumer, depending on the region. It's not the same as Asia Pacific as it is Latin America, Europe, or North America. So we will discuss again which business models work where. So with this very quick introduction about what to expect, I pass it to you back, Kasia.
Thank you. So it is very interesting that the pay TV model is still very much leading in the market despite emergence of SVOD and AVOD.
In terms of revenues, yes. In terms of revenues, not subscribers, but just revenues.
Yeah. So Guy, Natalie, what do you think about it?
So I had a question for Maria. I think what's really interesting when you look at this, and Guy will have some thoughts on this, a couple of things. One is in terms of that whole, you know, the number of subscription services that each household is willing to bear. We've seen some uplift. Initially, we thought it was 2, and we've seen there's a slightly higher tolerance, particularly under COVID. But if you look at the price points for a lot of these services, the outlier really is HBO Max by quite a considerable factor. So, you know, the average ARPU per household is quickly reached, but you know, of all those services, which range between $3.99, $4.99, and $9.99, you then have HBO Max at a fixed price point of $14.99, which I think is going to be a challenge going forward for them. So it'll be interesting to see what the Discovery HBO bundle looks like in terms of pricing and opportunity for those households. I think that's one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to ask Marie about is in elaborating. Naturally, we're looking at a retention as being one of the key factors that will govern, you know, the strategies of all of these services and pay TV operators in the next year, because we've had a period of growth through the COVID period. But I'm interested to understand where the next growth of pay TV revenue will come from, whether it's the subscribers come from, for instance, the Asia Pacific region rather than North America, which seems to be the mature market, and where the growth is in Europe. And what's very interesting about what Maria is saying is that pay TV revenue still holds strong despite subscription growth being driven by the OTT services. Guy, what's your thoughts on all of that?
I think it's a red herring to talk about the relative size of traditional pay TV versus subscription. It is bigger. Indeed, it is, as you've alluded to, growing in some emerging market regions, but the majority of growth, whichever content window we look at, is coming from streaming type services and platforms. And that's where the excitement is. I don't think any of us, I'm sure Maria included, would suggest that traditional pay TV, at least in the Western world, is an exciting growth market. But of course, we're getting to the point where the distinction between streamed subscription TV and what we refer to as traditional is becoming a moot point. Streaming TV is so ubiquitous that it's simply TV, and the means by which you get it is a technicality. So I think overall the subscription window, whether it's traditional or streamed, is growing very strongly. Indeed, of all the windows, that's the one that's growing very strongly, and that's the key point.
I do believe, Guy, depends what excitement is for you, but I do think that there can be opportunities of excitement for pay TV operators if they react, if they transform themselves quickly. So nothing stops them to aggregate streaming video, not only video, games, music. They have all the ingredients in their hands to become very successful. So they can do bundling, they can do great aggregation, they can offer subscribers things that you cannot get if you subscribe individually to different streaming video services. So yes, I do believe in excitement in pay TV. Yes, they have to, of course, adapt to changes. They have to maybe refocus where to invest their money. We know that some of them are now leaving behind sports rights. They're focusing on other type of content. Lots of changes are happening in the next 5 years. What I try to say with my slide is that pay TV is not dead. Yes, they have to reinvent themselves, and they are. Some operators are doing really well. And in countries like France, Portugal, India, Russia, Malaysia, Indonesia, South Africa, there is still growth coming from pay TV. So what I'm predicting in the next 5 years is more aggregation, consolidation, and not only in the video space. Service providers will become aggregators of video, games, music, all in one place. That's exciting.
Thank you very much.
Certainly aggregation is the next challenge, yes. And pay TV providers have had that opportunity for some time. I mean, we used to talk about it at Cable Congress 10 years ago. I think there's an attitude change towards the position of streaming services within that space, which is interesting.
So on that note, Guy, the recently announced mergers between Discovery and Time Warner and also TF1 and M6, what do you think? Do you think it is actually a sign of the bigger consolidation which is going to happen in the markets?
Yes, because we're in a situation driven by the things we've just been talking about, where companies need to position for a global market, and that is a global market from a content perspective. We're talking about a business that hitherto has worked on a very geographically segmented and limited basis, whether that be traditional pay TV, which is limited by often its infrastructure, or the content business, in which rights have always been sold country by country, or at best region by region. As we move, driven by streaming, to a market that is truly global, the consolidation that happened in previous waves 10, 15, 20 years ago, so-called vertical consolidation, where cable companies merged with content companies, no longer make as much sense, because you've got a geographically limited business aligned with a business that needs to be truly global. And so I think we're in a new wave of consolidation, driven by the demands of global rights access, that will see incredible activity in M&A among content owners needing to scale for that global marketplace.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think we're at the tipping point of a lot of interesting changes, and not just amongst the major US players, but we've seen, of course, the announcement this week of the broadcasters, for instance, 2 broadcasters in France, M6 and TF1, talking about mergings unthinkable 10 years ago, and very interesting development and precedent for broadcasters in Europe.
Yeah, Nathalie, I agree with Nathalie. There will be lots of partnerships that we didn't think they will happen a couple of years ago. Companies that we thought they were enemies in the past and now partnering, merging, or even acquiring each other, and more to come in the next 6 months.
It's interesting that the M6 TF1 is the one that people are questioning from a regulatory perspective. There's a general view that Discovery Time Warner will be fine, but M6 TF1 will probably meet regulatory hurdles, and I wonder how much regulation has caught up with the market changes in some situations.
Yeah.
You make a good point, because as someone who was around in the days of Project Kangaroo, if you look back at how out of touch the regulators were in the definition of the market then for online rights, and the major impact their decision has had on the ability of the UK to really be competitive in terms of the streaming markets. It's the same here in the notion of what is the advertising market that M6 and TF1 will have, and what will be the definition of it from the regulator's point of view. And we are testing the boundaries of their ability to actually understand this very rapidly evolving consumer ecosystem for content and content services.
Yeah, and the opportunity to get to move beyond borders, because as I say, not just the rights market, but the way that TV is distributed is no longer about geographic limitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So slightly changing subject and going back to actually Maria, what are the key drivers for subscription and churn at the moment?
Okay, that's a good question, Kasia. We do a consumer survey twice every year, and we ask consumers, why do you take up specific services? And in general, what are the more important factors when subscribing to a service? They have all told us around the world that range of content is very important. 60% of people said they look at how many series, how many originals there are in a particular streaming video service, the right price, good user interface. But then it was very interesting how in two countries, India and Japan, they told us it's very important local content. So in Japan and India, they said for us to subscribe to a video streaming service, we want to make sure they have local content. Hence the importance and why these big global streaming services are investing so much in local content that then can travel globally. So have seen many hits from all these countries traveling really well around the world. Not just the famous Spanish series A Casa de Papel, but other big hits from other countries, from Iran, from all over the world, Israel, lots of series around the world. In Apple TV, the first series, Tehran, was the first non-English series in the platform. So local content, Kasia, is becoming now really important, and one of the key factors why people decide to subscribe to a streaming video service. I found it very interesting.
Really important, really, I mean, really fascinating. And Nathalie, if we are sort of talking about the content and to a certain extent also windowing, what do you think the future of the theatrical window is?
I think, well, I think there's, for the operators, it's one thing. I think it's not so much about the window as the access to content for the operators. So, you know, as we have large scale streaming services that premiere on their own service, what does that mean in terms of the role and value of film content outside of those services within the operators? But for generally speaking, in terms of theatrical windows, I think the horse is sort of bolted in terms of the traditional structure of the theatrical window, and PVOD has been tested as a concept quite extensively. So I think we will see a shorter window, and we'll see, I think we'll see a continued play on that, whether with what's happened with Time Warner now, whether they'll continue with their strategy of day and date for their streaming services, what will be the role that Disney will have in relation to its own theatrical releases versus well, theatres. We'll wait to see. We'll wait to see post-COVID what the valuation is on theatrical rights and how that impacts downstream on the value of those rights within the services. But I do think we've seen a shift, and let's see, the consumers want to be able to access that content day and date elsewhere. We'll see whether the fact that there is a reduced PVOD window, whether that cannibalizes theatrical window or not. I'd love to hear Maria and Guy's view on that too.
Yes, Nathalie, we did a study about the losses in theatrical last year, more than 30 billion lost because of theaters being closed. and that money could not be recovered from pivot or any transactional video. So we do believe strongly that studios need theatrical. It's not the death of cinemas neither. Yes, there will be a change in the windows seeing and in the number of days, or some titles will go straight into streaming for sure, but some titles will always need the cinema. One of those titles will be James Bond. We just wrote a report saying how James Bond will always need to be in the theater. Even people like Guy here will prefer a million times to wait and watch it in the big screen than not in his house, in his living room. So there are certain titles that people will always go to watch in the cinema. So studios know this. They need to, the relationship theatrical studios need to come back to, they need to speak to each other, but that marriage needs to happen again because they need each other. So I'm sure some changes will happen, but not as dramatic as people may think. And
it's been a difficult marriage for a long time, I think.
But now they're changing. But for example, Pivot, the amount of money people were paying for a title, $20, $30. Last year, people were desperate when you had kids at home to make them quiet, to be in peace, not to make noise. You couldn't take them anywhere else. So parents were willing to pay $30, $40, maybe even $100 to keep them 2 hours watching something. But now that the schools are reopened, parks are open, I don't think that you can make that money through pivot or transactional. And then, yes, it's a good strategy to put some titles in streaming. It's a good way. I mean, HBO Max got lots of new additions when they did same-day release Wonder Woman in the US last year. At the same time, it created also some uncertainty in other countries because there was a confusion between where can we see this title? Is it same-day streaming around the world? Is it only in the US? And as a result, this has the danger as well of piracy. When people are not sure where to find content in legal ways, they end up watching it in not legal ways, illegally. So I think, yes, the Windows system will change, but again, theatrical will be there, will recover. It will take a couple of years, but people are really keen to go back.
We've seen that in Australia already.
Yeah, I mean, we broadly agree with that view. Theatrical collapsed 80%, obviously, last year, but we also predict largely recovery, and that for large budget releases, the theatrical window still makes sense. But there will be increasing experimentation around some of the lower budget releases going straight to direct.
And cinemas are reinventing themselves as well, experiential cinema, doing lots of different activities to attract people back.
So on that note, Guy, any other emerging consumer trends that you can see at the moment?
Yeah, it's another interesting question where I will say that it's a bit of a red herring, or increasingly it's a red herring, and in that answer lies an interesting point. Streaming services still skew younger, but increasingly growth is coming from an older demographic. Increasingly their content strategies are targeting more generalist audiences, expanding beyond drama, movies, comedy into reality TV and light entertainment, the traditional world of broadcasters. And I think increasingly talking about consumer differences between streaming and traditional, it becomes, again, a moot point. So back to a similar point I was making at the beginning, we're kind of at the point where streaming is so important in the in-home environment that talking about differences between streaming and other forms of TV, in inverted commas, becomes less interesting. But of course, there are still differences out there, simply driven by the fact that to date, uptake has been driven by a certain demographic.
Maria, Nathalie, can you add anything to this?
No, I would agree with Guy. I think we are now seeing the consumer universe collapse into each other, and it really is about not the device that people watch on, but what they watch and how they watch it. It's really, so I think I agree with Guy. I think streaming is now mainstream, literally, and it's available on your connected TV. It's available on your pay TV platform. It's available on your phone. It's very difficult to talk about a pay TV offer versus a connected TV offer, because often you have the same services being offered in different platforms.
And that's increasingly so, as we talked at the beginning about hybrid models. So as you begin to mix in ad-supported subscription and into one platform and one aggregation, obviously the audience comes with it, and some of those free-to-air opportunities bring in that older, less wealthy audience as well.
And I guess, I guess to pivot that question, Kasia, I would ask then, what is the challenge for the pay TV operator now going forward, other than the obvious one of retention, which we've talked about because of the projections that Maria and Guy have made over the next year of a decreased of a churn rate. But other than that, what are the key kind of challenges? And I think they revolve around consumer satisfaction, acting as the one-stop shop to create simplicity in a world of complexity in terms of choice. And pricing.
So I will say, Nathalie, yes, pay TV operators have challenges, of course, all the reasons you said there. But of course, also video streaming services, they have challenges, because there are more than 3,000 video streaming services out there. They face lots of challenges, how many they will survive and how many they will not. So it's not only how can you win a subscriber, how can you retain and keep that subscriber? And this applies for pay TV and the streaming video as well. And I know we're out of time, so the first question was what are the key assets to win subscribers? I will tell you now reasons why people leave video subscriptions. And in the US, the service with more churn, it was in fact Bisson, a sports streaming service. People complained there was lack of content, but again, last year was a bad year for live sports. HBO Max, 24% churn. And the reason, Nathalie, you mentioned this in the beginning of the conversation, in the US, people say they churn from HBO Max. They thought it was very expensive compared to alternative video streaming services.
Yep.
Then we have services like Disney Plus, 15% churn. And again, consumers in our Omdia consumer research survey, they said, no longer use it. I already watched all the content I wanted to watch. Therefore, I churn and I move forward to another service. So even the top names like Disney, they face churn. And one of the reasons is no longer use it. I already watch everything. And it's no surprise that of all the streaming video services in the US, one of the services with lowest churn is in fact Netflix, only 4%. So despite what everyone is saying, Netflix is dead because Disney is there, Peacock and all these services, is not. They have very loyal subscribers. Yes, winning new subscribers is challenging, but the churn of Netflix is very low compared to the churn of all the others in the US. So my message to close it is, yes, attract clients, subscribers, but make sure you retain your customer, because especially in the online world, it's very easy to move from one service to another.
Okay, so look, just quickly, just to wrap it up, because we're almost out of time, just one, we have questions from a panelist regarding Asia. Asia will become an increasingly important player here, picking up on Guy's comments on global markets. Maria, you mentioned Japan too, and the importance of local programming. Just in one sentence, very quickly, what do you comment? What's your comment here?
Me, I would say it in 3 words. 1 of every 2 online subscribers will come from Asia Pacific.
Thank you. Guy?
Done.
Yeah, the same. I mean, we all know how big streaming is in China. But it's such a diverse market, and very big difference between China, India, Malaysia, etc. But it's a hugely exciting, very dynamic market.
Yeah, Nathalie?
I definitely agree that Asia is a very dynamic market. I think the challenge is going to be ARPU and being able to balance that.
Yeah, right. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed talking to you. And this is the end of our session. And I am now handing back to Karen Doyle.
Thank you. That was fascinating. I think we could have all carried on for a lot longer though, couldn't we really? We'll have to carry it on over at the next live event.
We will do part 2 live from London next.
Yes, definitely, definitely. Can I just ask one question that's just come in this minute? We've talked about the difficulty of content discovery for years. As consumers have multiple streaming services, is there any solution to find content a consumer wants to watch?
Well, at the moment, I'd agree that that is the next big challenge. Technically, I don't think is a challenge. I think the technology is out there. It's more about metadata and access to user information between the different platforms, which they're not willing to share. And that makes full integration of navigation quite difficult.
I think unified search is a very important part of the advantage that platforms will also have in that. If they can make sure, like Sky has in the UK, that it tries to create an ecosystem with unified search, then people can search across all of the different services for their content. And again, as Guy says, the ability to customize your offer to what your preferences are, that's a work in progress, but it's definitely something that's been, a lot of people are investing a lot of time and energy trying to crack properly.
Yeah. Excellent. So we can wrap up now. Thank you all. It was fascinating. We will do a part 2 another day, hopefully. And if anybody needs to view the recording again, it will be on the members only section of ctameurope.com. And if anybody is not a member, I don't know why you wouldn't be, you can email info@ctameurope.com and we'll give information on how to sign up. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks to the 4 of you. It was fabulous.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.